There you
We're
go.
live. Welcome this Friday evening to A Flawed Man of God. I am Stuart Davis. I am here to talk to y'all tonight with my friend Liz. She is here. We are going to discuss women in Christianity and her thoughts and experiences about that. Now, this channel is something that I put together just to kind of offer you a glimpse into the mind, a glimpse into the life of an average Christian. I'm not a pastor. I'm not a biblical scholar. I'm not. I haven't been to seminary. I'm not trying to get you to join my church. I'm not trying to get you to donate to any special cause. I just want to offer exposure, discipleship, if you want to call it that. But if you are looking for someone to listen to and get that perspective, if you're looking to start a relationship with Christ, if you're just seeking something out there, I'm here. I'm here for you to listen to and offer content that I hope you'll find compelling. If it is something that you like, if it's something that you enjoy, if it's something that you think that somebody might need to hear it, by all means, like, subscribe, share this. You can follow me on YouTube. You can follow me on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter, eventually Instagram. But in all cases, it's going to be A Flawed Man of God. You can follow me on all. Please, the more exposure I get, the better off, the more people I can reach, and I feel like I'm doing something good. So, with that said, good evening, and again, this is my friend Liz. One of the things I wanted to do with this show was talk about women in Christianity, because it's a whole half of the population, right? And it's one that is often, I feel, understated in the Bible. We don't get a whole lot of perspective from women. There are definitely some notable women in the Bible. One of them immaculately conceived Christ, by the way. But
Yeah.
we don't get much of perspective from her except for that one small part. We hear about Ruth and Esther and folks like that, Deborah. We also have Delilah. We also have Jezebel. So you have the good guys, the good gals, and the bad gals. But again, we're mostly seeing the Bible through the eyes of Moses, through the eyes of David, through the eyes of Christ and his disciples. We don't really get that perspective. And so I wanted to get that going. And Liz, I've known her for many years. I didn't think she would want to come on and talk about it, but when she did reach out to me and said she wanted to, so hey, it was awesome. Liz
Yay.
Liz has a multitude of perspectives she can present, because Liz has been a wife. She is married to a service member who has made a career in the service. She has been a mom with kids, obviously mom with kids, with her husband deployed. She has been a mom with her husband stateside. She has been a mom stay at home mom. She has been a working mom in kind of all those phases through that. So there's a multitude of perspectives, and I thought that Liz had a wealth of experience that she could talk about and discuss just from being a Christian now. Now we're going to start the actual conversation off.
Okay.
With Liz. Liz and I, we come from very similar backgrounds and just like Kristen, who we had on a few days ago, we grew up in the church. We grew up in the church. We grew up Christians. And one of the things Liz and I were talking about right before the show started was, we had that presence of God with us, but being teenagers, growing up and young, you don't take that you kind of take that for granted. I just show up to church. I just believe in God. But how seriously do you actually believe? And Kristen had her life-altering experience quite young. And I had mine relatively young. And it was kind of unassuming. It was just I just kind of landed in it. But Liz, let's tell me about your beginnings as a Christian and as a young lady growing up.
A young lady. So when you grow up in the church and you just take it for granted when you're a teenager, of course, and then I don't think it really hit home for me until my husband was deployed and I was pregnant, and he was home for R&R, and our son had been born like 4 days beforehand. And I'm holding him and looking at him, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is how much God loves me. Like, wait,
That's what it's
no,
all
God
about.
loves me more than this. And it was like pretty amazing to feel that way.
That's when it hits you,
Um,
right?
yeah, when you're like, oh my gosh, this is how much God loves me. And yeah, and then my husband had to go back overseas, and so I was alone with our son for 5 months,
Right.
and I got through it with God, like on my side.
Now, I guess one of my questions is when you're as a young lady growing up, before you start taking, like you said, before you have that point where you take it seriously, and it's very real to you. Um, what was it like listening to sermons or being in Sunday school or whatnot as a lady and seeing most of the Bible, most of the things that you learn about being mostly from a man's perspective?
Well, I grew up in a church that women were allowed to teach Sunday school to children or other women, but that was it. They weren't allowed to serve in any other capacity because that's not what they interpreted the scripture to be.
Right.
Like you weren't even allowed up to lead a prayer. You know, that's where I get my fear of praying
Really?
out loud.
I just want to make sure it sounds okay, because you've heard me when I get those awkward pauses. Liz has been there for I can be wordy in a prayer at one point, and then at
Yeah,
the very end, just go, yeah,
I'm
just God
done.
bless us. Let's wrap this up.
I'm done. Yeah. Well, yeah. So I remember my mom was a single mom, and I remember visiting my aunt and uncle who were like went to church. Every time it was open, there they were. And I remember going to church with them, and my aunt saying like the man is the spiritual leader of your household and a spiritual umbrella, and and I thought, well, there's not a man at my house. Like my
Right.
mom's not married at the time, so and what if that happens to me? What am I just going to
What
sit back and not do anything?
did you look up to your mom for kind of that? I mean, not that you haven't had to be the single mom in a very real sense of like having being divorced or widowed,
Right,
but
but I've been
you've
without
been
my
yes.
yeah, without my husband. And
Did that help?
I asked him the other night when we went to dinner, and I said, what would you have done if I wouldn't have been able to successfully maintain our home and our family? And he's like, we'd be divorced.
But he had confidence. I think that's a thing, and that he has confidence in you, and and maybe more confidence in you than you have in yourself, and your ability to kind of keep that ship running while
Yeah,
he's gone. And I think if I remember correctly, the primary motivator for you, or at least one of the motivations that you had to come onto this show and talk to me about it, was that we don't really give credit where credit is due to women in the a Christian family, and the role that
no,
they serve or expected to serve. Um,
right. You usually see in the world and media, it's all, I mean, the people who get a show on TLC are usually not the people that represent what living out scripture is.
yeah,
They're sort of living out their own weird version of it. And like I saw a clip from 19 Kids and Counting where they
is
just
that the
like,
Duggars?
yeah, they like
Okay.
dissected the term helpmate, which is in Genesis when God creates woman, he calls her a helpmate for Adam. And it just went, and so this lady was like, that means she has to do whatever the man says. She has no choice. She has no you know, she's given nothing. If he wants her to do this, she's got to do it.
Right.
And I was like,
Yeah, that's not really had that goes. And I think that's, and I am a, call it a flaw, maybe, but I am widely regarded in the circles of friends that I have, is I am full of misogynistic comments and jokes, and I think they're hilarious. It tickles me. I think it tickles me and most of the men,
well,
not so
you
much.
can get by with like three to four, and then I'm like, all right, stop.
I get a lot of reactions, and I'm very much a reactions based person, and I feed off of reactions, positive and negative, in whatever way, but it's all in jest. But some people take this seriously, and I think that, and this is a responsibility that men have to shoulder to a degree, is that we have there are times and there are examples of men who have taken the Bible and used it as a cudgel inappropriately, because it should never be used like that, but used it as a cudgel to control their spouse. And I think that we talk about submission. The submission is often brought up by people who view the Bible negatively, especially women who view the Bible negatively. Oh, you have to submit to your husband. That doesn't mean that he controls you. I think that
Right.
that's more of, he is the leader, but you are, and we were talking about this, you're standing behind him, you're supporting him, you are advising him, you are that support that he can lean on, that he knows, being like, and using your husband as an example, as a soldier going into being deployed, going into a fight, and we can, where all the action happens. Why men get so much credit, and because we do those things, or we're leading a business, or we're doing these things that are newsworthy, and people write stories about. We do all these things, but when you have the family functioning the way it's supposed to, a man is more set up and capable to do those things because he knows that his wife is at home, capable and able to do all the things that she is never going to get credit for in the news or whatever. And then a man who properly appreciates that should be giving her all the praise. And then I think that they do, and I think that we do, in those regards. But like you said, the man needs to make all the decisions, or what you see on television, where the woman has to submit, she just has to do whatever the man does. That's not a partnership. That's not.
No.
I don't find any scriptural basis for that. And it's just, but so many, you've seen these relationships, toxic relationships, where the man is like, this is the Bible, I'm in charge, I'm the head of the household, that means you have to do what I say.
That's where I want to say to the woman. Now, I know women can get manipulated and be in when you're a toxic relationship. It's very difficult. But you just kind of want, from the outside, you want to go, can't read the Bible too. Like, read the Bible too. And where he says, wives, submit to your husbands, there's it's like that much of a paragraph.
Right.
And then where it says, husbands, love your wives, it's like that.
Yeah.
About love your wives like you love the church. And
right. Or not just like we love the church, but like Christ loves the church.
And to love your wives like you love your own self. You wouldn't not take care of yourself, so don't not take care of your wife.
And I think I think it's important for us as men, if we're going to assume the role of be the man that we're intended to be, a godly man, a man, or a husband and a father, a godly husband, a godly father, to remember, if we're supposed to love our wives like Christ loved the church, I view that as the church as the people, right? The church, the people who believe in God, believe in Christ, who follow him, who want to spend eternity with him in heaven. Christ died on the cross for all of their sins. This wasn't hey, you guys need to send me some sacrifices because I'm Christ. Y'all just need to do whatever I say because I'm in charge, right? You're all Christians, right? You just need to do. No. How did Christ show us? How did Christ show us an example? He showed it from sticking to his principles being mostly gentle with his words, but firm when he needed to be. And when it came down to it, at the end of the day, he sacrificed his life on the cross temporarily for 3 days, but still he endured
for
being
the
nailed to
church.
a cross and being executed as the Son of God, as part of the Trinity. That type of divine nature, he had no reason to deserve it, but he did it anyway because he loved the church. And
Yeah.
I think that's a big example for us to take, for men to kind of humble themselves in that role if they feel like, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else, feel like you're getting kind of, letting that ego get a little bit out of control. You need that confidence to a degree to lead, but at the same time, without being toxic, without being, without
Cruel.
putting down your spouse.
Yeah.
Because we're in this together, right? Me
Right.
and my wife, you and your husband, y'all are in this together. We're in a partnership. We succeed together and we fail together. And that's why I said, once you start using pointing the Bible is why you need to be doing whatever I say. Whoo, man, you are in it. You are already in a bad spot, and
Right.
all
Because,
those red flags start to wave.
well, right. What if you're telling if you say you have to be submissive to your husband, and then he starts like, doing drugs or abusing your children, and you have to go along with this because you're supposed to be submissive to me. That's not what God calls you to do at all.
Right.
Right. And in that case, that's where you would look. For me, that's where I would look upon other women in the Bible who are strong and were not ruling over men at all, but were, capable of leading when there wasn't a man there to do so.
And you have, kind of the friendship that you have with my wife and some other ladies, but how important is that sisterhood of Christians to your faith?
Very important, because they'll hold you accountable, and then when you start to go off the rails, they'll put
But
you back on.
what about when, and that's important, right? But
Right.
what about maybe and you might not be a great example for it, but where could you see it would be as assistance for when for helping out somebody whose partner is toxic? Because like you said, the Bible's gives a lot of leeway for divorce in cases of adultery, but what you've talked
Right.
about is something different.
Right.
Child
So,
abuse or substance abuse, or something else going on where or spousal abuse, or beating you up, right? Not things that you've ever had to worry about.
Right. I
But
mean, I would not think God would find those things acceptable, especially the children thing. There's the passage about the millstone around your neck if you lead children astray. So I think God would not want you in a situation like that whatsoever, and it's perfectly acceptable and not sinful to leave and seek help.
Right. And that's what I want to say. Just kind of a disclaimer here. Neither of us are counselors, and again, neither of us are biblical scholars. We don't know exactly what the right answer is as far as divorce, keeping your marriage intact or not, but getting out of that situation, fleeing, removing yourself from that situation, I think is a no-brainer.
Yeah. And then you do not have to remain in that with that person, but as a Christian, you, even if you're angry and hurt, pray for that person.
Yeah.
And and then forgiveness will come.
Yeah. In my perspective, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. When Adam and Eve sinned, and their punishment was for the woman to have the desire to rule over her husband. So
but not actually achieve that.
Right. So you have that desire to rule over your husband, and you have to focus on what Jesus says in the New Testament, and not submission is not a sign of weakness. Submission is a sign of strength.
Yeah.
For you to be able to say, okay, I'm going to let you lead us and lead the children and lead me. And that's a sign of strength and a sign of respect for your spouse.
It's a sign of faith, I think, too.
Mm-hmm.
Not just faith in God, but faith in your husband, right? And
Right.
I could say that from that perspective, when I feel like my wife has my back and she has faith that I can do or I can make the right decision, I feel more confident in the decision I'm making. And I kind of and I kind of work twofold though, that I also, as just a personality trait, when somebody tells me you can't do that or that's you're not right, and I'll be like, okay, yeah, let me prove it to you. But at the same time, for it to be for that healthy relationship to continue to go on, that step of faith, and that and dealing and wrestling and conquering that struggle that God puts forth to Eve, to say you're going to want to dominate your spouse, but you're not really going to do it. When you put that aside and you say, look, I married this man for a reason. I married him because I'm probably attracted to him, thought that he was good family material, and but that he could do that. He could be that man to lead. That's that you're
Right.
getting into that relationship. Um, just saying, okay, I need to do that. You're setting him up for success better, and I think it allows you to kind of take that weight off your shoulders, to say, okay, well, he's gonna make these decisions. All I need to do is make sure that I support him in that way. And we talk about, I think of support in the military sense of, we've got the infantry guys and we got the guys who do all the hot shot maneuvers, and again, the things that people write stories about. Nobody writes stories about the cook. Nobody writes stories about the guy who carried the ammo, the guy who, but the Army fails, succeeds or fails based on the logistics and the intelligence behind it. I
Right.
think largely and it is most set up for success in that instance. If you have what you need to get the job done and you know where you need to go to do it, you're good. You're pretty much good. And I think that's the thing. Nobody talks about that stuff on the back end except for people who actually know what's going on. A man who understands the importance of his family and how important it is to be well run, understands the importance and respects the skill set that his wife brings to the table.
Right. Well, and it's also important to point out that throughout your marriage, especially if you're married for a long time, you are both going to go through periods of where you are going to fail as a leader, and the other one has to step up.
Right.
Because you are united in Christ and you are a team. And I read an interesting article. I sent it to you that said that.
Where did you send it?
I don't know. I texted it to you.
Okay.
That said that God made man, and then God took the rib of man, of Adam, to make Eve, and man is the image of God.
Right.
So he takes some of Adam to make Eve. So therefore, Adam and Eve both have different aspects of God's complete image. Right. And so when we come together and are married, we are the complete image of God.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I thought that was really interesting.
Be fruitful and multiply.
Right.
If you look at, go ahead.
Like women are more gentle, in general, and more loving and easy to communicate, except for me apparently. But like when a man and woman come together, they represent the entire image of Christ. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, it does. And when you said that, when you talk about the gentle nature of women, the femininity, I think I got it right. Femininity. Yeah. Those natures, if you can take those qualities and you can take the masculine side of the man, and the qualities that he brings. And you can look at those and see that spoken about in the Beatitudes when Christ is on doing the sermon on the that's during the Sermon on the Mount, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What are you talking about? Blessed are the meek, blessed
Yeah.
are the peacemakers. Basically, those are two things that I think speak strongly towards the women's the woman's role, and those are blessed things to happen to have.
Right. Well, and in America, it's frowned upon for a man to be meek and gentle. In other places in the world, probably not.
I think that
Interesting.
well, if you get a cluster of men together, there is there always is the ribbing that goes on to that degree, but there's a respect held for those who maintain their masculinity while still being men of peace, men who are supportive and whatnot. The struggle that we have with men today is that there is such a weird imbalance. I think it's an imbalance between both genders. Such a weird imbalance. Because I think that there has been a movement with women to want to say, hey, look, we can and should be doing all the same things that men are supposed to be doing. And men are saying, well, I really like this girl. I feel like the only reason I'm going to get these girls is to be this guy that they want me to be. And I want to just say whatever I can say that'll make her happy, or do whatever I need to do to make her happy. And because you've got those things coming together, you end up with without the type of symbiotic relationship that God made for man and woman, and because we are kind of going against the grain of our natural talents, our natural expectations, our natural qualities. The man is missing his masculinity, and the woman is often missing her femininity. I think I got that right this time.
You did. Yeah. Well, I think definitely men are emasculated a lot now. In like and just like commercials for cleaning products. Like it looks like the guy's like, I don't know how to use the sweeper.
I'm the dumb husband coming home. I'm just
right. And like, what did you call it? That you said it should be called brooming. Remember that? When we were at the beach, I was sweeping, and you said it should be called brooming. Or you were sweeping the sand, and you said it should be called brooming. And
I might have had a lot to drink that night.
Ever since then, I call it brooming. I call it go broom.
Yeah, go broom somewhere. But I mean, what does that make you? I mean, I guess from a woman's side, when you see a man with those kind of qualities, do you kind of feel like something's missing with that person?
Well, I think if you
not that you're looking for somebody in that regard.
No,
obviously. But
I think if I'm able to, I think it would be for me, a turn off if the person I was with was if I said, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that, do this, do that. They said, okay.
Just get that done.
Like, no, like.
No, but I mean, you feel like you're like,
or we're doing this.
We're
going here. We're doing this, and
right.
It's sort of a turn off if that person did whatever I said we're doing.
And as a mom watching and you have a son, but you have sons or daughters, and would that be something where you like, where are they supposed to get their positive male masculine influence at? Because I think, sons and daughters both need that. They need to understand that. Is that something that ever goes through your head?
I think my husband does a good job of showing me love and affection so that my daughters see that.
Yeah.
And then showing when to be tough and leadership for our son.
Yeah.
Who is not very tough, but he's working on it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think my husband does a really good job of showing both sides of being a leader, but loving his family and his wife.
Well, I've always been complimentary to him of he exudes a lot of the leadership qualities the that I expected out of the military, and I think that his career is a big reflection of that.
Mhm.
But also, you translate that to being a father and being a husband, and he knows how to do it. He knows how to do it. He does it the right way.
Yeah.
And that's why I said we don't really have anybody in here with the perspective. My wife and I, we are both very stubborn people. We're both very stubborn people,
But
but both love each other very much, and we both understand the expectations that we have for each other still. And so while we might, if we have a disagreement on something, we might dig in pretty deeply. At the same time, at the end of the day, we know that we've got each other's backs in that respect. So, I come from the point where I know my kids are getting the example they need from a mom, from their mom, and I try my best to set that example so that my kids know that from a dad's perspective, we are.
oh, sorry, I think my battery's almost gonna die. I'm not trying to wrap it up, but I don't have the power cord.
That's okay. Oh, okay. How much battery power does they say you have?
19%. I can
Okay.
have my assistant bring up the power cord.
I mean, if they're watching right now, they can do that.
I don't know if they're watching.
If we got a like and we've got a love reaction. So
Ooh, okay. Let me.
we've got a smiley face in the comments. So that's good. That's really good.
Well,
But that's what we're not coming from this. Neither of us have a perspective where we've been in a toxic relationship in a family situation as parents, as spouses, where we had to get out, or we were on our own, or we were on an island somewhere and we just needed to emotionally and spiritually on an island, and we needed that help. We both come from very stable environments. But this is, to me, that's the reason we see that success is in part one, we understood that importance getting into those relationships, and also maybe a little bit of blessing on God's side, God looking out for us. Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I very much wanted to be married and was looking for anyone to fulfill that role. And thankfully, God had it not work out with the people that I thought were right for me.
Yeah.
And then I met the person who was actually what God intended for me.
I had a lot. Yeah. I had a lot of instances where I was like, oh yeah, this is the one for me.
Yeah. And then you're like, when you finally meet the one, you're like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the God moment. It's that God moment. We were talking about that with Kristen the other night too. It's just like, because and you were there in Sunday school,
Mm-hmm.
when she was going through that time where she was struggling and wanting to. She had gotten past all of the she'd gotten past the accident and the identity of being in that accident and her condition afterwards. But now, and she had moved on to the point where, all right, I'm moved on with my life. I'm in a good spot. I need to be in a relationship. That's where I want to be. And power cord. Yeah, I told you. She was in that spot. That's where I wanted to be, and she was struggling in that regard. And we saw that, but she had pretty much finally said, "Look, I'm going to stop looking online. I'm just done with it. It's over with. I didn't have a great experience." And the next thing you know, she turns around, at her new church, and she goes and meets somebody, and all of a sudden, look, now she's married, and she's reached that next point, and she's doing better because of that.
Good.
Thank you.
Stuart says thank you. He said he gave a thumbs up. My technical assistant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that your family leader?
Yes, briefly. Over there.
So, all right. So we've talked about we've talked about the kind of the mom, some of that experience of just the generalities of being a spouse and being a parent. But when you were through the different facets of motherhood and being a wife that you've been through, how has God really played that role in your faith? Really played a role in helping you through
Uh,
through those through those seasons.
when I look back at like photographs where I'm holding my daughter who's 5 months old and I'm pregnant, I'm like, how did I do that? Like, how did I?
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, like, or when they're both like, when both girls were little and they look like twins because they're so close,
They did. I
close in
had
age.
the hardest time telling the two apart when I
I
first.
couldn't tell them apart in the dark. Like, I couldn't
This
figure
is a
out
NASA hair at that point. Yeah.
who had come into the room. But so I'll look back at it and wonder, how did I survive that? And it's just that God was there, even though I don't recall like active, just like crying out to him or whatever. It's just he like carried us through it.
Did you ever go through moments where you had something specifically difficult, like a specific event that was difficult, and you just happened to get through it? Like maybe a trip to the grocery store by yourself with
Yeah.
3 kids, and you made it home, and you're like,
So I did have that at the grocery store when Sadie, well, I have a couple. When Sadie was like, my daughter was tiny in like the baby carrier.
papoose.
Yeah, and then I had the other one, and I had the older one, and the older one wanted to get markers, and I wouldn't let him, and so he's crying on the floor of Target, and like I couldn't. Normally, my go-to was to just leave the cart, leave, and that would usually they would know that I was upset, and they would be like, "Oh crap, we really messed up."
Yeah, no markers. If you just leave, there's no markers.
Right. But I had to purchase what we went there to get because it was formula to feed the baby.
Look, eventually they'll be hungry enough. Well, they'll be so hungry they don't have enough energy to
To
throw a
cry.
pamphlet.
Yeah. So I'm, just like, I mean, I think I like dragged him out of there. Like he's sitting on his butt and I'm dragging him through the checkout line. And I get him in the car, and this lady stops her car and yells out her window, "We've all been there. Just hang on."
That sounds like
And
something your mom would have done. Was it
I
your mom?
know, no. And I was like, okay.
Driving off, be like, I'm not watching them tonight.
Yeah. But I mean, I've had other moments too where one of my girls had a meltdown at someone else's house where I mean, not maybe a couple of years ago, where I had to carry her out of the house and put her in the car, and she kicked my seat like the whole way home, screaming and screaming. And I don't even remember what it was about, but just screaming. And I the song "Child of God" came on the radio because I turned up the radio to be like, I'm not listening to this. And I didn't say a word. I just let her go. I didn't say a word, but that song really hit me in that God chose me to be her mother, and so He's equipped me with the skills to handle her. And it gave me a lot of peace. And by the time we got home, she had calmed down.
Oh, I was going to say
she calmed down, and I still didn't say anything because I didn't know. Like I was just so overwhelmed with that was rough. And she came upstairs and made put new sheets on my bed and new covers. And
what did you do exactly?
And I didn't do anything. And then we, then I was able, once I had calmed down, because I was holding all that in, we were able to talk about her behavior. But it was a good 20 minutes, 25 minutes of me just being silent and her screaming.
Did she just say at the end, she goes, whatever you do, please don't just drive home cranking God music all the way. Don't put me through that anymore. Whatever I need to do to
No,
behave.
she likes that.
I know. And for anybody watching, Liz is a phenomenal singer. And that is truly a God-given talent. It was one of the things. It's the first thing I noticed about her when I started going to our church was Liz was on stage and she was singing. She had a great voice, you know, and you just, that person in the congregation who can sing, Liz is that. But one of the things that we saw, one of the first things we did was our pastor went through a thing where he said, I want some people to make a sign that says things that they are afraid of. And Liz had wrote, I am terrified to sing on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And she had that up there. And I'm like, that's impressive because like, I get it. Right. And it's easy for me to get on a camera in the comfort of my own home and talk to people who may or may not ever watch me, even though this is available for anybody, literally anybody who has access to YouTube to watch. But at the same time, I'm not standing up on a stage with the light shining in my face, real light shining in my face, not the $7 Amazon light shining in my face, real actual stage lights standing in my face with everybody watching, intent on me singing to help get them in the mood to worship. And with the expectations, you are gonna sing very well, and we're all expecting it because we know you can.
Yes, but if I'm asked to like, hey, why don't you do the communion meditation, or why don't you lead a prayer? I've gotten less terrified about singing, but I'm terrified about that.
It made me feel you putting on there. I mean, there were other people who I knew before I started going there that had made me feel comfortable about the church. But that was one of those moments, aside from the pastor really having a good presence that I related to. That, you know, so that sign was just one of those reminders of like, this church has got a congregation I really should be a part of, because you're putting that out there. And that's a moment of vulnerability. That's not related anything to what we're talking about actually tonight.
No, but just be warned, if God puts it on your heart and then you go for it, like you're gonna get thrown right into it.
Yeah.
Because I just mentioned I mentioned, hey, if you would ever want me to sing, you know, something, and poof, here we are, 7 years later.
I dabble in singing. Okay. Yeah. I don't know about that. I mean, I think that's just, especially the small church thing of, oh, can you do something, anything?
Oh, yeah,
do you have
some
talent? Get
here. Yeah. There wasn't an audition process.
No, just get up there and sing. Whatever you do, it's kind of like me in softball. Is like, I haven't swung a bat since T-ball, and they're like, we don't care. We just need somebody to get up there and do it. We know you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And hey, look, and that's one of the reasons we'll have our youth, or not youth minister, our music minister next week come on, and I know he's happy that you're on the team. He is very, very happy that you are on the team.
Yes,
all right, so having all, so that was, you gave the one example or the couple of examples with one kid and your husband being gone. You're at the grocery store and you get kind of that sisterhood, that his sisterhood support. We've all been there. And you get that, you know, that kind of nudge in the side from God to be like, hey, you can do this. And you lean against him or lean into him to say, you know, well, you gave me power to do this. I have faith that you have given me the tools I need to accomplish this. Please help me out. And
I'm very visual, like in my mind, I guess. And so there were times, not recently, but probably in that, where I would, like, I remember being like on the kitchen floor, like crying, and I would just visualize like Jesus behind me with his hand on my shoulder, like, and helping me up, you know.
Nice.
Yeah. And like, same thing with, there would be times where I would pull in the driveway and just want to put my head on the steering wheel, and I'd be like, nope, I can't do that. I'm not doing that. I don't know why, but that was how, like,
do you feel like when there's times where you're down on yourself that you feel, did you feel that leaning against him, or I keep saying leaning against, I don't like the connotations of leaning against, but leaning into him, leaning on him for support has had a very real experience of uplifting?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I went through my journey with endometriosis, and I got mad at God one day and said, you know, this has been like 3 years of almost constant pain, and I sing at church for you, and I do all the volunteer for you and all this stuff. And I just kind of heard like, it's very child, you know, I was being a petulant child, but God can take it. And I kind of heard like, are you done? And I'm like, yes, I'm done. And God saying, it's going to get resolved, but it's going to get resolved in my time. And I'm like, I know.
But can we do it? Can your time be sooner?
Can your time be sooner? And no, it's got to be, you know, my time. And then I don't, maybe a year later, I finally had one of my surgeries, and I've had a lot of surgery, and it was the first doctor who ever prayed over me before surgery. And I was like, this is it. This is it. This is the one that resolves it.
Oh, I thought you said this is the one where I'm not coming out of the surgery because he prayed.
Oh, no.
Saved on the way in. So I can go peacefully into heaven.
Well, yeah. No, but I knew that was like, because I had had all these tests under the sun to find out what was wrong with me, and everything always came out great. And then when I remember waking up after that surgery and being like, did I have endometriosis? And he was like, yes, a lot. And it felt
get all the endometriosis.
Like it felt wonderful. Like, yay, I wasn't crazy. But yeah, I got mad at, you know, I guess I've always, you know, when you take the time to talk to God, you get a lot of results.
I think that happens to a lot. I don't think that's, I mean, it's something that we have to struggle with. We're a family, right? And you're not always happy with what your parents do. And sometimes you have your temper tantrum. Sometimes you have your struggles. And I think that, you know, like you said, God's sitting there going, you done? You ready to be adult about this now?
Like he can take it. Go ahead, be mad at him, yell at him. He can take it. But you just listen for his response. And then when I say I heard that, like, I'm not physically hearing, it's more like this voice in my mind. Yeah.
Oh, I know what you mean. All right, so let's talk about something that another thing you want to talk about. Women in the Bible, we don't focus enough. We tell the great tales of Moses, and he's parting the Red Sea, and we tell and Joseph in his great jacket that he was given. No, like the things that he did leading Israel or leading Egypt through that thing. Daniel in the lion's den. Obviously Christ and all the amazing things he did in his sacrifice on the cross. Paul basically starting the church, the Christian church, and him and Peter and the other disciples / apostles. They're all men. And I guess it would be interesting if we could get a Catholic perspective, because there is a lot of reverence. The Catholic perspective in Christianity. Go ahead.
Do you want me to go get my mother-in-law?
No. we could go but there's a lot of reverence for Mary specifically, and there's a lot of reverence for women, for other women. Mary Magdalene, another one, a lot of reverence. But biblically, again, they're here and there. You know, Mary.
Well, in who
Luke, do you look up to as a woman in the Bible?
Oh, look up to. Okay, so I really dig the story of Mary and Martha, like a lot. Wait, I wrote. I marked it. Because All right, so a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home, Jesus. Her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he taught, but Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came here. I'm sorry. She came to Jesus and said, "Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? And tell her to come and help me." And this like speaks to so Martha clearly had anxiety. And but the Lord said to her, "My dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her."
Because she's washing Christ's feet at that point, right?
No, she's just sitting at his feet. There's another
She's
woman
sitting at
that
his
there's
feet.
a prostitute that comes and washes his feet.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
Is that Magdalene? Is that Magdalene? Who does
I
that?
don't. She's not named.
Okay.
She's not named, but she comes and washes his feet with perfume in her hair,
Right,
and her tears, and he forgives her many sins and praises her. Yeah. But I always like that story because, like, as a housewife, I mean, also when I worked too, like, if you're gonna have people over, you are crazy.
Look, I always remember my mom. We would not have people over if the house was a mess.
You are crazy when you're about to have people over.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things about having our group over is because we're all focused on, well, we have fun, but like we usually end up talking about Jesus for a long time. We're singing songs, and I don't really care if the house is messy if you guys come over.
Oh, okay. I've never noticed.
I tried to clean it, but I mean, like, if it doesn't get done, to me, it's not a big deal.
The fellowship matters.
The fellowship matters. Yeah. So
I agree.
But like, I think they're a great example of how, I don't know, I remember laughing when I read that story the first time because Martha was like me when people are coming over. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I can't talk to you guys right now. I'm making bread.
But Jesus is here.
Right. Right.
But I can also see that, like, especially if you believe that he's the Messiah and you're like, he's in this messy house. I don't want to be him. I want to be in this messy house. I want to put on my best, like my best outfit when I go to church. You know, I want to look good. I want my place to be nice because Jesus deserves that. He deserves to have me looking my best and preparing a place for him that's as worthy of him as I can make it. But at the same time,
but in that passage, his desire is, or not, I mean, he praises Mary, who sits at his feet and listens to his word, and doesn't care, you know, though there will be food, it doesn't need to be right now. You know what I mean?
I think it's understanding your priorities, and you're getting wrapped up in everything when you're missing the main priority, which is the Jesus being there and having that presence,
right?
And saying, "Hey, look."
Well, and another woman, another Mary, was the one who discovered the tomb was empty.
That was Magdalene.
Was it Magdalene? Okay,
I think it was both Marys, right?
I think so. It's in. I wrote and marked it.
We should know this. We should know this.
There's so many Marys. There's so many Marys.
Which Mary's married?
Yeah, there's like 11 of them. Okay.
Should be 12 to make the number correct.
And this is in Luke, which is much more, like a document. You know, it's very factual. It doesn't really say the name, but I think it was a Mary. The women were terrified. So it's a group of women. Mary Magdalene, yes. Joanna and Mary.
Oh, okay.
2 Marys.
I thought his mom was there at some point. I don't know.
That was his Mary, mother of James. And wasn't James his brother, his half-brother? Yeah. Again, we did not go to seminary school.
Yeah.
But
we're not going to nail it every time.
There was an Easter service where we sang Glorious Day by Casting Crowns. And the verse about finding the tomb was empty is led by the woman from Casting Crowns.
Right.
And I just chirped up with, well, it's led by her because a woman found the tomb empty. And and another person at our church was like, "Oh, look at you knowing your Bible facts. I never thought of that." And like, I don't know Casting Crowns personally, but that's why I thought that verse was led by a woman.
Well, I mean,
Because the
it's
woman,
fitting, it's appropriate, right?
yeah.
That's what we're going for.
So yeah, my whole point of my goal is to encourage Christian women that, you're yes, you submit to your husband, but that does not make you weak.
Right. Do you feel like you're lesser than your husband be,
No,
because you are a stay-at-home mom and he is doing his career thing?
no, because he's a good husband and tells me what I'm doing is just as important.
Right. And okay.
But it could go the other way, where you could be a stay-home mom and your husband's like, you don't do,
Yeah.
you don't bring any money into the house. Like,
Right. Is there's a house that's in the right shape for you to get home and
right,
the
but
stuff is done and ready for you.
that would
And
be
your
an
kids are not
example.
starving.
Well, and that's an example of your husband not loving you like he loves the church.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah, and as I said, it's a cycle, and it's a cycle, it's a circle, it's a partnership, it's so many things. It's two people coming together. We are supposed to be one soul, and at the same. And again, you need, if the
yeah.
part of that is out of sync. If you two are out of sync, then it's not the
Well,
well-oiled running machine.
we're equals, but we're not. But we are fulfilling different roles.
Yes,
Yeah,
both equally important,
right.
right? Not necessarily equally lauded in society. And I think that's part of the problem too. We worry so much about what society thinks about us without worrying more about what God thinks about what we're doing. Does God appreciate the things that we do? And now the God and our spouse should appreciate the things that we do. One,
Right.
because God is who we're trying to live, to be closer to, and our spouse is because we're in this journey together now, because we've gotten married. We've decided we're going to marry each other.
Right. All right, you got 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh, for that, I mean, it's however long, but yeah, if you want to. So, and I think that's the important thing. Like, if we want to wrap this up and get to that point, is women. God created woman to as a companion to man, as part of man. So that's part of that means that we are responsible for them, and as men, we have to understand that is our role. We don't get to just go, things aren't right around the house. That just means that my wife isn't doing things correctly. No, it's a reflection. It's a reflection on us and our leadership qualities and our teamwork in doing that aspect. And women on the and women in the same respect, I need to go, okay, I'm not going to get the um I'm not going to do these things that other people are going to feel are these these great adventurous, noteworthy historical things, or the things that that men strive for. But I did the important stuff. I did very important stuff. I did stuff that set my kids up for success. I did stuff that set my husband up for success. I was there to be that support that allowed all the things to get done to help our family be a success, because ultimately, again, being close to God, being a good family member. I think that's something that I feel like that's something that women should take away from what they see in the Bible and what they see from a partnership.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, if I chose to work outside the home, um, that would be, I have done that, but that's
Yeah,
not what I felt God calling me to do.
right.
So the other thing I also tried to do was I tried to be there for other working moms, like
Yeah,
babysit, fill in, this and that. So if you're not called to stay home with your kids, don't do it, because it is You know, you can still be a support to your home and your husband, and in those instances, like, you're gonna have to be more of a team
Yeah.
in the things that are more female, and you know,
You
like,
just well, it's this thing. We just because that God has this system set up, this ideal system set up, doesn't mean that we don't have to step up when that system is not there. Like if you did have to, if you are divorced or if you are widowed, if you did have to get out of an abusive relationship or you were the person who drove the other person out. If you're on your own with your kids or on your own just in general, that doesn't mean that you're a lesser than person. God still wants you to join, and that doesn't mean that you can't do things. You've got to do what it takes to support your kids. You've got to do what it takes to do it in a way that reflects well on God and yourself and helps them lead more to Christ. Because what I guess my question would be, from a parent's perspective, especially I guess speaking to a mother's perspective, what is more important to you, making sure that your kids are happy or making sure that your kids are saved?
saved.
Yeah. I mean, we want them to be happy, and you think that one will come with
Yeah,
the other.
but happiness doesn't equal.
That yeah, you get into God just wants us
Yeah,
to be happy, and we know that's a garbage saying.
right.
But again, a lot of times if you are saved, you find happiness through that. But getting to that save point or setting your kids up for that might involve them not being happy along the way or might doing without, just it might mean you making that sacrifice or happiness for yourself to make sure that you're the example that your kids need, that you're best setting them up. You're setting them up for the best success.
Yeah,
So, and if you're, like I said, if you're divorced, widowed, you're doing what you can. You've got to provide for them. You've got to get out there and work. You've got to get out there and do what you've got to do because we've got to live, right? And it
right.
doesn't mean you're bad. It's just you've been given this obstacle and you overcome it, and in whatever way that you need to, that is the right way. So I don't.
Yeah, I mean,
I just don't want. Go ahead.
I would encourage any woman to take time to read the scripture and read the word and see how much God values women, um, and so that you don't feel less than if you don't have a supportive husband, or you don't have a husband, or you don't want a husband.
Yeah. Where where do you find the most inspiration for God's love specifically for women? I mean, is there things that you place? I'm not asking you to quote specific verses or whatever, but give like parts of the Bible where you find okay, when
Well, I think the entire gospel is great because Jesus recognizes women, you know, all the time.
yeah, most of
Um,
the time where they're being taken advantage of or being abused in some way.
yeah. But then when you go back now, and this is going to excite you, when we go back to the Old Testament, then you see a few examples of women who are just like the one who put the tent spike through the guy's head.
Deborah,
And no,
awesome.
Deborah didn't do that. It was another woman. Um,
Oh, that's right, right. But that was her.
that was her
That was
thing.
her
If
story. That was her. Yeah.
Yeah, that was her. Yeah. And you're so
Ruth
I
as a
mean,
judge.
yeah,
Um, Esther, which is almost a comedy, but and
yeah,
she's taking her directions, I think, from Mordecai and also from God, because she says, "All right, you've told me what we need to do. Let me pray about it. Let me fast and pray about it, and then come up with this." And guess what? She's smart enough, witty enough, and uses her feminine, God-given feminine powers to say,
yeah.
"Hey, I'm beautiful. You love me. Guess who's trying to kill all of my people? Your
Well,
buddy over there, the advisor.
I looked up
I made
the
you this great feast."
I look- I when you look at the lineage of Christ in Matthew, it does mention some women in there,
Mhm.
and so I wanted to see where their stories were, and there's one Tamar, and she slept with her father-in-law, who was Joseph. She veiled herself like she was a prostitute and became pregnant from him.
Oh, that's Judah, I think. Is that Judah?
It was him, Joseph. Maybe it's Judah. Sorry, yeah.
Is it one of Jacob's sons?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Judah.
Okay. No. Well, okay. And then it was
Joseph is a saint.
sorry. That was right after that.
It's kind of a one-off. If it's a one-off account in
Joseph was right after that.
well, it's in the middle of the whole Joseph thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like Joseph's in Egypt, and by the way,
okay, yeah, it's Judah. Okay.
Yeah, Jacob's doing this, and just hey, his son goes off and marries his daughter-in-law, or gets his daughter-in-law pregnant.
Right.
Back to then back to
Joseph. Yeah.
back to Joseph. Back to everything else.
And then there was Rahab, and she was a prostitute.
That was the one in Joshua, right? When they're getting ready to conquer the city. She's the spy, I guess.
Yeah, she's the spy, and she keeps.
She's in the she's in the lineage of Jesus. Yeah,
yeah. And Ruth really didn't do much wrong.
I didn't know Ruth was in there. Okay.
Yeah, she's in the lineage of Jesus as well. And then Bathsheba is in the lineage of Jesus. And David killed her husband, and then, so they were adulterers. So that's just more proof that God will use all things to his glory.
Yeah.
So
So the first Baptist wasn't in the lineage of Jesus, which was David's first wife, who didn't like him dancing, which is a very Baptist thing.
Oh yeah, she didn't. Well, he was dancing in his underwear.
It's festive, or he was naked. I don't know, making a fool of himself.
I thought he was in his underwear.
Okay, I don't know.
If there's anyone watching, just comment. Was David in his underwear?
Yeah, there would be. Whatever it was not pleasing to her that he was out there making a fool of himself.
Right.
So, all right. Well, I mean, I think that's. I thank you, Liz, for coming on here. I think you've done a great. You've done a good job accounting for yourself as a woman of Christ with real opinions, with a real perspective, and can find things in the Bible and in everyday life to kind of pull from. And I think it's, again, if you're a woman watching this, use Liz as an example that, there's going to be times where you might be angry, or find times where you might feel alone and isolated, but you can still pull through it. You can lean on God. You can there are women in the Bible that you can pull positive examples from, and people that you can look up to and be like, I can be better. I can be more like these folks. And
remind yourself of that daily.
Yeah, and draw strength for that. And then men watching, one part of the thing is holding each other accountable as men, as Christian men. And part of that is a big part of that is the family, because we're not just looking out for ourselves when we're talking about leading the family. We're also talking about looking out for the example we set for our kids. And we always go back to one of my favorite lines with Jesus was, don't lead these kids astray, or else you might as well just sink to the bottom of the ocean.
Yep.
So everybody, it's Friday night. Hope you're being safe. Again, if you didn't catch this live, leave me a comment. And if you've got a question for Liz, I can always ask her and answer through that. So with that said, have a good evening and good night. God bless everybody. Say goodbye, Liz.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.